Why did I write the book? Well, it's a history of the H-2A program, which is a very formal name for this second oldest guest worker program in the world. The guest worker program is a program where workers are imported to a country with the approval of the state, but on a temporary basis. So they can be imported as needed and deported when they're not needed anymore. The program that I study was born in World War II, in 1943, at the same time as the Mexican Bracero program, which is much more famous. But the Bracero program ended in 1964. This program continues today and has been expanding since the 1980s. For most of the program, Jamaicans dominated this temporary population. What we see in the late 19th century is growing fear of migrants because of a vast increase in the number of people around the world who are migrating as serfs are liberated in various places in the world, as slaves are emancipated, and also as it becomes much cheaper to travel across oceans. Guest worker programs are born in this sort of tumultuous moment at the end of the 19th century when employers are clamoring for access to cheap foreign labor, and nativist groups, anti-immigrant groups, are clamoring to bar the very same people. And so guest worker programs are really state compromises. When Jamaicans are brought in, they are barred from working south of the Mason-Dixon line by the Secretary of State, the British Secretary of State for the colonies, for the British colonies. He was fearful that they might be lynched, but he was also fearful that there would be an international event that would make Britain and the US look bad at a moment when they're fighting Nazism abroad and they're fighting fascism. So they go north and they go to Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Wisconsin. They're greeted by marching bands in some places. They're often the keys to the city of New York. They're given the use of the country club. On the other hand, though, there is enormous pressure for them to move south to Florida in particular to harvest sugarcane. And there are no marching bands. There's no keys to the city. They're met by officials of the sugarcane companies who are more accustomed to working with convicts. And so they're met at the train station, for example, by sugarcane managers who are carrying blackjacks and guns. You can't describe guest workers simply as victims, right? And there's lots of literature that describes them as slaves, and they often describe themselves as slaves. But at the same time, they, after complaining of mistreatment, after sometimes going on strike, after being deported for going on strike, after complaining bitterly about ways in which they were cheated and mistreated, the same men would often get back in line and line up to do it again, which we can presume a slave wouldn't do, right? That these are people that choose to go despite the exploitation and despite the mistreatment. Can't have our cake and eat it too. We can't have foreign workers from abroad and refuse to integrate them into our society without creating a world in which we don't want to live in. We've had that world before. We called it Jim Crow, where we had a working class that was considered different and alien and ineligible for the benefits of society. We've replaced that essentially with an immigrant system of Jim Crow, or what some historians call Juan Crow, which is largely the same. The real key to guest worker programs here and in most places around the world is that employers have generally controlled who comes in and who goes. So I'm just not sure there's a way to reform this system. You would have to take that power to deport away from employers. But I think it's the key to what employers like about the program is that they get to control that labor force in a way that they can't for domestic workers who have the power to quit. It's the essential right that the workers have.